Hello and welcome everybody into a G-rated version of the PHNX Sun show. No, we'll still say bad words. It's not that kind of G-rated. It's where we're talking some more of our favorite movies and films. He's Gerald Bourgain. I'm Espo. And today we're talking The Batman.
Yes.
I loved it so much I went full Commissioner Gordon with the mustache. But Gerald, what were your initial feelings about The Batman?
So I had mixed thoughts, and it's not because I thought it was a bad movie. I really enjoyed it. I think maybe I went in with the wrong expectations because I read some of the reviews and I bought into the hype so much and I was ready to have my world rocked, and it was really good. It just didn't rock my world the way I was kind of hoping it would.
I think it got oversold as some kind of Seven Zodiac Killer mashup where I think it put in a lot of people's mind that you were going to see grotesque things in this film, right?
Yeah, and I think to a certain extent there were elements of those movies that like I really enjoyed, and I think the one thing that I appreciated about it is it really emphasized kind of the world's greatest detective side of Batman that we don't really get to see in a lot of movies. Usually it's just, he's a crime-fighting superhero. But it really kind of went into the detective side, and it was more of a lot of the film was more of like a suspense, mystery, thriller, serial killer type movie. So I did enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, I was there with you. I thought we were going to get something that we didn't in terms of that with a lot of the hype. But when I got past that, I really enjoyed the film because to your point, we get to see Detective Batman. This is more of true to the comic book kind of character. This isn't a superhero film.
Right.
This is a detective film with a guy in a costume.
Yeah.
Is what it amounts to.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that because I think that makes for a more interesting film than some of the Batman movies we've gotten over the years. And I like the way that played out. I like the psychological side of it too, because finally we got the angst of a Batman without having to see his parents be killed.
Right. I love that aspect of the movie as well, and I think it ties in nicely with the type of movie that it is as far as how it pairs Batman with the Riddler, because and Paul Dano does an amazing job as the Riddler, probably one of my favorite Batman villains that we've seen on screen. But it kind of like juxtaposes them against each other and makes a couple comparisons, even with the way it's filmed. We should probably say spoiler alert.
Spoilers
There's
and all
spoilers
this, right?
if we're talking about the movie, obviously. But there's like the very beginning of the movie where it shows him spying on the mayor, the Riddler spying on the mayor through his binoculars. A couple scenes later, we see Batman spying on Catwoman.
Yeah.
And obviously their intents are very different, but it does show that dichotomy of, Batman and his villains are always like two sides of the same coin. So I really kind of liked that aspect that like Robert Pattinson's take on Batman is not like this noble guy who has a traumatic past and is a hero in spite of it. It's this guy has a fucked up past and it's driving him, and that's kind of why he's this like awkward recluse kind of dude.
Well, and he somewhat accepts it too. And you're right, at the beginning of the film, you don't know what point of view you're getting. You think for a second it's Batman until you get some weird heavy breathing and you go, I don't think this is Batman. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But it did hold one thing we got used to in the Nolan films were very intense opening sequences, right?
Yes.
And it held true to that. I liked that. That was kind of an homage to that opening scene in The Dark Knight or the opening scene in The Dark Knight Rises. You get one of those. It's very intense. It's very interesting. It kind of lays the groundwork for what to expect. But
it's very immersive just right from the start.
Yeah, and I love that this movie does not play, the Waynes, Thomas and Martha Wayne, as these altruistic, like we get this, they were unbelievable, they were humanitarians, it's this, it's that,
Right.
They could walk on water and they were killed, and this film actually deals with the realities of if they lived in this city that was deteriorating, that we always hear about, their hands get dirty a little bit too. And and I don't know if this is comic book accurate. I have not. I don't know my comic books as well as I wish I did. But, and major spoiler alert, Martha Wayne is actually Martha Arkham, which plays into. I'd never heard that before, and my guess is it was a liberty that Matt Reeves took and kind of built it into this universe. But that whole aspect of it, and that the asylum is named after it, is that I loved that as well. To add to why the Batman is who he is.
Yeah, and I'm not as well versed in the comic book side either, at least to that extent. So I can't say whether that was something that ever appeared in the comics, but I did like that it kind of expanded the lore a little bit, because you hear Arkham all the time in anything Batman related, but to hear that they were like one of the two pillar families of Gotham is pretty cool, and the way that tied in together. I did want to talk a little bit about not just Robert Pattinson's take on Batman, which was different, but also Paul Dano's Riddler, because you touched on the heavy breathing. It threw me off a little bit at times, but like I feel like he stole kind of every scene that he was in, and I feel like to be a good Batman villain, that's kind of a staple of the genre. What were your thoughts on his performance?
I thought he was fantastic and lived up to that. I mean, everybody looks at Heath Ledger. I mean, Jack Nicholson to a certain extent. There's always iconic villain performances. He had to live up to that, but he did that, but in a way we've never seen in a Batman film. And I hate to say this, but it felt more rooted in reality. And I get that we're still dealing in a fictitious world, but this felt like I could see this happening in the world we live in, which is terrifying in its own right. But he very much did steal those scenes. He was very calculated in the way he approached it. His tonality, the things that he did with what Matt Reeves gave him was spectacular. I really enjoyed his performance in this, and especially if you've seen him in other things, he's more of an unassuming guy. Like this isn't a guy you think, oh, supervillain, you know, which again, not really a supervillain, just a criminal, a deranged criminal in this film. But I loved his performance. Robert Pattinson, we did on the show, we did the superhero draft, performance draft. I think he might have actually surpassed Keaton.
You think so?
For me.
Really?
Yeah, this is the first time I feel like, and granted, I just saw this, so this could be recency bias. I have to watch it again to really, probably a few times to really solidify this.
Yeah.
But this is the first time in a Batman movie where I watched it and Batman wasn't overshadowed by his villain's performance.
Yes, I agree.
Like Christian Bale overshadowed by Heath Ledger, and at times even Tom Hardy.
And Tom Hardy, yeah.
And even Liam Neeson in the first movie. Michael Keaton in the first film outshined at times by Jack Nicholson. Toe to toe, I felt Dano had a great portrayal, and Pattinson was right there the whole time. This was the first time I felt that both Bruce Wayne and Batman being portrayed by the same guy fit both roles. Like the whole thing just came together very well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think with the Riddler, and I loved all of the kind of, because the Riddler's always been portrayed as kind of like this goofy, quirky, like his name is literally Edward Nigma, so Enigma. So there's always been like a corniness to that character.
Giant green suit with a goofy hat.
Question marks all over. And like in the Arkham video games, that was the first time where the Riddler is kind of portrayed as like, nah, this dude's like very smart and very dangerous, because he does have these kind of like Zodiac killer leaving clues, breadcrumbs type of mind. And I felt like this movie like really took that and ran with it, and I appreciated that. But you're right, like Pattinson's, see, for me, like it's kind of like people who grew up watching the original Spider-Mans and like Tobey Maguire is their Spider-Man. Like for me, growing up with Christian Bale being chiefly my Batman. I feel like he's still like the person that I think of when I think of Batman, but like Pattinson's performance was probably the best because, like you said, this was the first time where Batman's anguish as a character actually mattered. Because like it's always been Batman's the hero. Like Batman conquered, he got past these horrible things that happened to him, but it was never like he's actually a compelling character because of that backstory.
Yeah, I was afraid too that we were going to see him as another creature that could turn into a vampire, if you will.
Yeah.
And I didn't see like I never at once was like, oh, that's the guy from Twilight, which I was legitimately worried if the performance wasn't right. That was all you were gonna think. Didn't think it once. He did great with that. And a guy we haven't talked about, Colin Farrell, as the Penguin. Like
unrecognizable.
My wife actually was like, "Who played the Penguin?" I was like, "Colin Farrell." She's like, "Real funny." I'm like, "No, that was actually him." Again, another guy. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the performance. I came out. I'm ready for the HBO Max show they're doing with him. I'm like, I wish that was ready to roll right now. I want to see how he is as a mob boss. How they do that with him. He was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean this like you said, if I hadn't known that was Colin Farrell going in, I would not have been able to guess it. Yeah. I would have tried my damnedest, but I wouldn't have been able to get there. And I feel like this whole cast was just kind of dead on. Like Jeffrey Wright as commissioner, or not commissioner yet, but James Gordon. John Turturro as Carmine Falcone. He did a great job. Yeah. Like he needs to be a mobster in more stuff because he does that well.
Another guy that could have easily just been like, oh, well, that's the guy from The Big Lebowski, or that's the guy from Fill in the Blank. And no,
Mr. Deeds, the butler.
He did a great job with that. So.
Yeah. And the, Andy Serkis as Alfred, Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. I know Michelle Pfeiffer will always be held as like the number one Catwoman, but I feel like Zoe Kravitz is in the conversation now after that movie.
Yeah, I mean, another fantastic performance. Really, overall, really good performances in this, and some choices that weren't your typical choices, because let's just say it, Batman films tend to be very whitewashed.
Yeah,
they were not. Commissioner Gordon or James Gordon, an African American in this. Like I like that they went outside the box of what we conventionally see in all this. Yeah. Overall, let's just get to it. And if we're gonna give it a rating, I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna give it 9 out of 10 Phoenixes.
Okay,
it's not a perfect film. I still probably say that The Dark Knight overall is a better movie.
Yeah.
In the end, but I am excited to see where this goes in subsequent stories with this group.
Before I give my rating, speaking of where this goes, your thoughts on potentially another, spoiler alert again, potentially another Joker being introduced into the mix, because that is definitely what was teased, and it's Barry Keoghan, who he's not a well-known actor, but he did play one of the Eternals in Marvel's recent Eternals movie, a couple other things.
Supposedly, there is a scene that wasn't included in the movie with him.
Really? Okay.
That Reeves said may be released in future months.
Okay, so we're already hyping the sequel up.
Yes,
that's the plan.
My guess is when it goes to streaming, which is supposed to be like April 19th, it's a quick turnaround.
Oh, damn. Okay.
On HBO Max. My guess is we see that around then. I don't know how I feel. We've seen so many portrayals of the Joker, and there's such a large rogue gallery for Batman that do we really need to go back there? But maybe we're gonna get a way that's being told that we haven't seen, where it actually, I mean, if we continue with this, Batman is a detective, maybe we'll get a meteor story with the Joker there.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see what kind of demented take they get on it, because like the Joker was rated R, the Dark Knight was PG-13, this one was PG-13. So I feel like if you introduce a demented version of Joker to an already demented version of Riddler, I don't know, you might be crossing that boundary into R territory at some point. Right?
I don't know why they didn't go R.
I feel like they could have with this, and there was a lot of cursing in the movie too. I felt like they were like right on the cusp like one more F-bomb would have maybe pushed him over.
This isn't a movie you're taking a kid to.
No,
you're probably not taking an 11-year-old to this.
It's
even.
not a fun Batman movie. Like it's not fun.
So,
but it's good.
So I wonder if they embrace it, because like Peacemaker on HBO Max totally blows past the bounds of anything that you're gonna usually see in these kind of things. I'm okay if they go R-rated. If you give me a Joker that is different, that we haven't seen. I don't. Joaquin Phoenix's was that mental side, but maybe it's this guy was inspired by that guy. If you tie these things together, and that adds depth to the story. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm still very up in the air how I feel about that.
My antenna always go up when we come back to the Joker, because if it's not Heath Ledger, if it's not Mark Hamill, like even Joaquin Phoenix, his performance was fantastic, but it still feels like second tier to me compared to those guys. But I trust Matt Reeves based on what he did with this movie to still give us something different or at least compelling.
You know what? I was glad. Arkham, when you see it there, you finally go, that's a place you'd house somebody that was dangerous. And all these other renditions, you're like, why is this some like broke down, janky, if I rattle that cage a little bit too much, the whole thing's going to fall over? Like, you go, they're not getting out of that unless they have some crazy plan to actually get out of that. And I appreciated that aspect of it.
Yeah, so like I said, I really enjoyed this movie. It was dark. It was gritty. It was like a noir Batman movie, which is different. And like you said, it was grounded in reality. Like the first time Batman flew, he like crashed. So that was kind of funny.
And he used a base jumping suit that actually would be used to do something like that.
Right.
You know?
But for me, like you said, Nolan's, not just The Dark Knight, but I feel like Nolan's trilogy is still the gold standard for me. Like I think I would still take any of those three over this one.
I don't know. I would not take Batman Begins.
I really liked that one, though.
I feel like this was a better introduction to the
universe.
To the universe, where I bought into it and I felt it, because, and we'll see, because the trilogy for Nolan built, obviously the second one the best, but I still feel like we didn't see his vision. Obviously, Heath Ledger passes away before you get to that third film, actually before the Dark Knight's even released. So what could that third film have been? And I think Matt Reeves has a chance to put together, if they go a trilogy, something that we look back on and go, okay, that may have tilted this genre in a way we haven't seen done yet.
Yeah, I think, that's where I struggle, because I feel like this has a chance to do something different. And I like what it did in the first one. I still like Batman Begins, for me, is like the perfect kind of setup for Batman, even if it's not the full detective side of Batman as well. I don't know, but I really did.
Origin telling.
Yeah, it is the best origin story for him that's not animated, I feel like. But yeah, I'm gonna give this 8.5 Phoenixes out of 10. I really did enjoy it, and I think it's the kind of movie that demands another watch if you're a big Batman fan.
I will be. I'll probably see it in theaters and then watch it way too many times on HBO Max, because that's just how I am.
Yeah, because I saw it by myself in the theaters yesterday, and my girlfriend wanted to see it, so we're going to definitely see it. It's 3 hours long, so it is very long, but there's a lot to take in, and it's very beautifully shot. So
and if you didn't see it in IMAX, it's not bad in IMAX.
Really?
Too.
Okay.
Yeah, we saw it in IMAX. So.
Okay. Yeah.
So there it is, 8.5, 9 for the Batman from me. And you know what? If you enjoy Batman, you'll love this film. If you enjoy the superhero genre, I don't know. It may not be your cup of tea, but it's a good movie. So go check it out. For Gerald, I'm Espo, and we'll see you soon.